Welcome back to my channel for another episode about the Leica SL3. And a lot of people in comments asked me and said, can you demonstrate and show how it is to shoot on this autofocus system camera manual focus Leica-M lenses? And that's exactly what this video is all about. So I will mount M lenses here. I will show how to focus them. We'll demonstrate the focus peaking and zooming into the scene. We'll show how to deploy these lenses in the menu so that they are recognized by the camera body and you later find what lens you have used in the metadata. And in terms of lenses in the studio, I will use my Apo-Summicron 50mm Leica-M lens. Widest open here is an f2.0. It's an absolutely brilliant lens. I've shot this lens a lot on Leica-M cameras, but also on system cameras like the Leica SL3. And the second lens I want to deploy for this video is my Leica-M Summaron 28mm. So a typical focal length like you have it in the Leica Q series for street photography. Widest open here is only an f5.6, and that will turn out in the course of the video to be super convenient for street photography on Leica-M rangefinder cameras, but also on system cameras like the Leica SL3, because focusing with this lens here is almost a piece of cake. Let's kick this off. Alright, so the first thing in order to use Leica-M lenses on the Leica SL3 is you need an adapter ring. And that's the Leica produced Leica-M to Leica-L system adapter ring. So here you mount the Leica-M lens, and this one here is going into the lens mount on the SL3. And that's a tiny piece of equipment which you definitely need. If you don't have it, you cannot shoot Leica-M lenses on the Leica SL3. Of course, there are third-party adapters which you can purchase and deploy, but this one here is the one I recommend. Now, before I forget to share this, there is something interesting going on that original Leica-M to L mount adapter. And what you see here is the ability of the adapter to read the optical coding of the Leica-M lens. Every, let's call it modern Leica-M lens, has an optical coding here. If you count the number of information which is provided here, it's a 6-bit coding. And that coding, of course, is unique for every Leica-M lens. You see on the Apo-Summicron here, it's a different coding than on the Summaron here. And in this way, the Leica-M rangefinder camera body can identify via an optical reading what M lens the camera body is dealing with. And on the adapter now, you have on both sides this feature integrated. Here is the optical reading of the optical coding of the lens, and on the flip side of the adapter you find electronic contacts which go into the Leica SL3 camera body, and then this optical coding, this reading of the code on the Leica-M lens, is converted into electronic signals which enable the Leica SL3 later in the metadata to record what M lens has been mounted to the Leica SL3 camera. And I think that's an important information. At least I wanted to share here before we continue with the video. Currently on my SL3, I have the Super Apo-Summicron 21mm for the SL system. That's one of my most favorite lenses at all time. I've already reviewed this lens on my channel. So if you have not had anything to do with that lens in the past, here is an opportunity for you to watch my video and get familiar with that lens. I think it's a brilliant lens for street photography, for landscape, for architecture, for all kinds of applications with a Leica SL system camera. Let's now unmount the Super Apo-Summicron SL 21mm. Let's find the lens cap. So this is stored in an appropriate way. And let's mount the adapter. Now, first of all, this is very straightforward to do. You find here the red dot, and on the adapter, you find also here the red dot. So we have to align this and to match this here, and then it finds its way immediately onto the lens mount on the camera body. And now I can rotate it until it snaps in. Listen to the sound. Beautiful. Very solid construction. I always like the way how Leica is building their gear. And we are now ready to mount the Leica-M lens I want to use in the studio here for demonstration and illustration purposes, namely this beautiful Apo-Summicron 50mm. So let's remove the lens cap. And then again, we have here the red dot. We have here now on the adapter, you see this here, We have here on the adapter the red dot, so we have to align this and again match it, and then it immediately finds its way into the adapter ring, and then I can rotate it again until it snaps in. Again, listen to the beautiful sound. Boom. That's it. So this is mounted. I can now here manually focus my lens. There is the focus ring in the usual way. I have an aperture ring here. You hear the clicks, and in this way I can steer how wide open my aperture is, and so on and so on. Now that the lens is mounted on the Leica SL3, we can actually start focusing here. And that happens via the focus ring, and you see here nicely how the focus peaking is kicking in. And I also have a magnification function here on the joystick. If I press that button, it actually zooms in. And then you see here, this is out of focus, this is out of focus. Here it's coming into focus, and then the blue focus peaking is kicking in. Now there are several things to say. Maybe for you, this will not work in the same way because you have set up your Leica SL3 in a different way. So let me show you my settings here. First of all, let's go into customize controls. And that's actually here. And if I go into customize control, I can here configure my buttons. The FN buttons where I have 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5 at the front side of the camera. And I can also customize my joystick. And for the joystick, I have now here in manual focus mode, magnification switched on. And that means whenever I press the joystick once, it zooms into the scene by 100%. If I want to escape that mode, I just quickly touch the shutter release button. And then I'm out of that mode. Let me demonstrate this again. I push the button, I'm in magnification mode. You see here the focus peaking in blue color. I touch the shutter release button, and then I'm back into the normal scene mode, and I can oversee the whole scene in front of the camera. Simple like that. So that customization function is important that you remember that. I have it always set up in this way, also when I shoot with Leica SL cameras, because it's nice that you have this functionality. If you push the joystick, you actually get into magnification mode. There is also a feature which you might know from Leica SL lenses mounted on the Leica SL3, and that's the auto-magnification. Now let me show you that. If we go here into focus, settings, then you have here focus 8, and if we go into that, there is auto-magnification. And this is currently switched on. I can also switch it off. And at first sight, the disappointment might be big that here with Leica-M lenses, it does not work in the same way as on Leica SL lenses. Namely, if I start to rotate the focusing ring here, it will automatically magnify the scene. So let me convince you that this is not working. Now I'm starting to turn around my focus ring here. You see it, out of focus, kind of in focus, out of focus, but there is no auto magnification. Why is that? It's because, as I explained before, if you need to let the camera recognize that you are turning the focus ring, you will need to have electronic contacts between the lens and the camera body. And that's not the case here. As I explained earlier in the video, the maximum we get here is the 6-bit optical decoding, so that the Leica M to L adapter recognizes that coding, translates into electronic signals which are channeled into the camera body so that the camera knows what lens is mounted. But that's all you get. There is no way that the Leica SL can know whether you turn here and rotate the focusing ring or not. And that's why auto magnification here is not working. If we go into that setting, it's not working in the same way as if you have Leica SL lenses mounted, where if you go into manual focus mode, you actually will have an effect that the moment in time you rotate the focus ring on the Leica SL lens, it will get you the same effect as if I would push here my joystick. And that's not working because there is no electronic communication going on between the Leica M lens through this adapter and the SL camera body. Let's talk in more detail about focus peaking now. So you see here out of focus, no blue color, in focus, blue color, out of focus, depending on how much I turn here the focusing ring on the Leica M lens. And that's something you can customize. Let's go into the menu and we go here into Capture Assistance. And in Capture Assistance, you find info profiles. I have only 2 here activated. Profile 1 and 2, Profile 3 and 4 are deactivated. But you have 4 different info profiles and you can toggle between them by pushing the FN button. And I show you now how I have set this up for this demonstration session here. And I have in the first info profile, I have basically no information blended into the screen at all. Let's look into that. info bars switched off, grids off, clipping off, focus peaking off, level gauge off, and histogram off. And this is then my info profile number 1. You see here, no information coming in. I can turn the focus ring how much I want. There is no focus peaking kicking in, nothing going on at all. I still have the magnification function, of course, because that's associated with the joystick and not with the info profiles, and no information is displayed. If I press now the FN button, the camera switches into info profile 2. And you see now I have information blended in. I also have the focus peaking. Let's go back to info profile 1. Focus peaking not existent here. Then pushing it once, I come into info profile 2. So let's go into the menu and let's have a look into that, what I set up here. Info profile 2 is here. Let's go to settings. And then in settings, I have on info bars, I want to have them at the top, at the bottom, and switched on. And that's what you see if you look into that profile here. You have here information and here information at the top and at the bottom. Let's go back here. And if we go here into grids, I've not blended them in, but I could. Let me quickly do it for you. If I go here to 3x3 and I go back, you see the grids are now here. And I will do a bunch of tutorials on the Leica SL3 very soon and will explain much more functionality you can use here. Let's get rid of them again because I don't need them here for my session. Info profile 2, settings, grids, let's switch it off. And now you see the grids are gone, but the focus peaking is there because it's set up in the menu for profile number 2. And you see this here. You see here focus peaking is activated. If I would deactivate it, no focus peaking would be here. If I activate it, which I'm going to do right now, and I go here and switch it on, focus peaking is there. You see the blue color has returned to my model Jennifer here. Let's go back into the menu and to profile number 2. And now we can also customize the focus peaking. And I have here, first of all, the color where I can select between red, green, blue, and white. Let's go for red for a moment and let me show you the difference. Now you see the red color in the focus peaking. You see this is out of focus, in focus, out of focus in the other direction. I can blend in all types of colors here in these settings, which, you know, might or might not help in one or the other scene, depending on what your background is, where you want the focus peaking to be applied. So if I go here back and go here, for instance, into green, you will see that the focus peaking is now green. See here? Very simple. And going back here, we have more things we can change. And I actually use most of the time blue color, which is my favorite in the focus peaking. So now it's blue. It's what you saw at the beginning when we started the session on focus peaking. Now, besides the color for the focus peaking, I can also tweak my sensitivity. And there are 3 options here. There's high, medium, and low. Let me try to illustrate to you how that works. So first of all, I'm in the high setting and I can try to find my focus via the focusing ring. And you see then if I found focus, a lot of blue color kicking in. Let me now change this. And by the way, let me close the aperture a little bit because that makes my life much easier. Let's go to f5.6 and not f2.0. So now we have here high. Let me switch this without moving the camera a lot into medium. And let's try to see what happens then. If I go here to settings on focus peaking, let's go to low first. I think that might illustrate the fact better. You see much lower number of blue points here now. No matter how I turn the focus ring, this is out of focus, in focus, out of focus. And now the focus peaking is much more selective and is not as quick as detecting where the focus is sitting. And I think the best compromise actually between the 3 is the medium setting. So let's go here into settings again, settings, focus peaking, and then sensitivity. Let's go to medium. You will see now more blue points on the focus peaking on Jennifer's body here than we had in the low setting, but less than what we had in the high setting. Have a look here. And that is, in my opinion, the best balance between not detecting some edges in the focus peaking where you're maybe not interested that the focus is sitting there, and at the same time having a sensitivity high enough that you find actually your focus. So medium is always a good setting in my experience. There is not a lot of science going on which I can explain here, but it is about detecting edges and contrast in edges in focus peaking. And if you have it on high, you know, the camera might be too early convinced that this is where the focus is sitting, and if you have it on low, it might be much more difficult to find focus. That's why medium, I think, is a good compromise. Now, if you work with focus peaking, you might not want to go to the menu all the time and find capture assistance and then info profile 2, which is currently switched on, and then focus peaking and focus peaking settings. And a good idea if you work a lot in manual mode with Leica-M lenses is to actually customize one of the function buttons. And the one I use the least for other functions is the switch between electronic viewfinder and LCD, which is this button here. Because I have it on auto all the time and I really don't need that functionality to switch here and then to come back to LCD only and then to auto mode. And that's why it is a good idea to customize that for focus peaking, if you use focus peaking a lot and want to have quick access to the parametrization. So let's press and hold, and then I can switch through all these options here. And once in a while at the very bottom, I will come to focus peaking and can actually select this for the function button. Now, whenever I tap now this button, it takes me into focus peaking off. And then if I tap it again, it takes me into focus peaking on. That is already convenient. Now, if you want to have access to the full spectrum of settings, you might want to go 2 levels higher in the hierarchy, namely to capture assistance. So let's go back, press and hold. Let's go back here, and then we have capture assistance. And then if we press that button once, it takes me directly into the info profiles. So I don't have to scroll via the menu until I find the correct place where the capture assistants are and the info profiles. And that's a good idea. See, I tap it once, I get directly to the menu where I can tweak this here. If I then shortly tap on the shutter release button, it actually takes me back into shooting mode. So customizing some of these function buttons depending on what you use most on your Leica SL3, maybe in combination with a Leica-M lens, is typically a good idea in my opinion. There is something more I wanted to show here, namely coming back to that 6-bit optical coding, helping the SL3 to identify the lens which is mounted. And the way to see this is to go into the camera settings. Let me show you that. Here are the camera settings. And in the camera settings, we have the lens profile. And if I go on that, a scrolling here starts. It says Apo-Summicron-M. And then it says widest open is an f2 and it's a 50mm lens, aspherical in terms of optical properties. Now if I go on that, you see this is switched on to auto. So the optical coding on the lens and then the translation of optical coding into electronic signals via the Leica M to L adapter is fully deployed here in auto. I can also switch this off and then you see no lenses detected. But for the image stabilization, it's actually very important that the camera body knows what focal length is mounted. And the in-body image stabilization, since is based on sensor freely floating in a magnetic field and in this way compensating for tiny little shakes and vibrations, that also works like a charm with Leica-M lenses. So you get longer exposures in handheld shooting with Leica-M lenses, and it will work as long as the camera knows what focal length is mounted on the lens. That's an absolutely crucial information for in-body image stabilization. Now, if we go into that again, you can also switch here and select other M lenses if the camera would not recognize them. There is a long list here of M lenses in all kinds of variations and schemes. And if you don't have an M lens, but maybe a Voigtlander lens or some other lens you are mounting here from a third-party brand, you can also specify your focal length manually so that the camera can deploy in-body image stabilization in the way it should happen when you want to go for longer exposures in handheld shooting. And that's a very convenient menu entry to bear in mind. I have this on auto when I'm going to shoot with Leica-M lenses because the camera recognizes by the 6-bit decoding on the Leica-M lens I'm using what lens it is, what focal length it is, and image stabilization in the camera body will work like a charm. The lens I used for the sample images I'm going to show, shot with the Leica SL3 and the Leica-M lens, is actually the Summaron-M 28mm f5.6. So let's hot swap the lenses, means I will not switch off the camera, I will show you how this works. So let's press the button here, let's unmount the Apo-Summicron. Let's make sure this one is properly protected. Never allow dirt or dust to get into your lens. Let's get this one here, the lens cap removed. And then we will find here the red dot and the red dot, as I illustrated before, needs now to be aligned with the adapter red dot, which is here. So let's have a look. We have it here, we have this here, we align it, and then it snaps in. Beautiful, that's it. And you see now, I haven't done anything, but based on the 6-bit decoding on the lens, going through the adapter, converted into electronic signals, which the SL3 can understand, it automatically shows me this is now an M lens. Here is also the product number, 11695, 28mm f5.6. So in-body image stabilization will work in the way I explained before, and it was working in New York City when I went for street photography. I can get this information away, of course, the new lens is detected information, by shortly tapping on the shutter release button. And then I'm back into shooting mode. Let's remove the lens cap here. And now we should get a live view. Of course, much wider than what we had before on the Apo-Summicron 50mm. Let's get my focus field here. I'm on spot metering, by the way, to Jennifer. And here is my zooming in. And this lens here is special because you cannot activate the focus ring without pressing here a little bit, and then it's released. And now I can focus here and can see where my focus peaking is kicking in. See, it's blue now. You see it, let me go back here, and then you will see how this kicks in. And the aperture is f5.6, so you see also the two other De Witcher figures on my TV screen here. They're also blue, and they very likely will also be reasonably sharp if I take a shot. That's the lens I used for street photography, and why is this a lens I prefer over many other lenses in street photography? So here's the depth of field table for the Summaron-M 28mm f5.6. How do you find this table? Well, you go to the Leica download section for this particular lens, and then you can download the specification or data sheet. It will be a PDF document, and in that PDF document, if you scroll for a while, you come to the depth of field table. Reading a depth of field table is actually very simple. In horizontal direction, you have the f-stops, so how wide your aperture is or how much it is closed. In vertical direction, you have the distance setting, and the metric used here on this specification sheet is in meters, not in feet, although most lenses will show you the same information in meters and in feet, in particular from other brands. Let's make an example what information is provided here. If we go, for instance, to an aperture stop of f8 and we focus at a distance of 2 meters, we get a depth of field or a range where everything within is reasonably in focus of 1.223 to 5.678 meter. If in street photography my aim is to have most of what's going on in front of me in the scene is sharp and in focus, I'm after, for instance, a setting like we have it here for f8 and a focusing distance of 5 meter. Or for instance, if I want to stop down one more stop, f11, and focusing at 2.5 meter. And you see in both examples at the right hand side of the range where everything within is reasonably in focus is infinity. So that means up to the horizon everything will be sharp. And for the f8 setting, it kicks in for me here in this table at 1.910 meter. And for the f11 setting, at a focusing distance of 2.5 meter, it's already starting at close to 1 meter, 1.194. And that's obviously a good range if you go for city and street photography, if you want to have everything sharp and in focus. The procedure of deciding for a focusing distance, so for instance on the f8 example we had before 5 meter, or the f11 example we had before 2.5 meter, and then getting the information from a depth of field table or from an app on your iPhone or Android phone, what the range is where everything within is reasonably in focus. This procedure is called zone focusing. Some people also call it range focusing. I prefer zone focusing nowadays because range focusing is very close from the terminology to rangefinder photography, which means actually something else, namely using the rangefinder, for instance, on the Leica-M camera to then get the focus I want. And here it's really about setting the focus range on the lens and then being able to trust that everything within that range coming from the depth of field table or an app where you specify the range is reasonably sharp and in focus. When I later show the sample images from NYC, don't be mistaken because there is no electronic communication between the M lens and the Leica SL camera body. So the aperture setting as Lightroom is showing is actually an aperture which the firmware of the Leica camera is guessing at best effort and is not the aperture I was using. Alright, after that little excursion into the theory of how to read a depth of field table, let's turn what we just saw into practical action. And the two settings I used, and zone focusing is all about setting up your parameters on the lens for your depth of field. The first one was going to an aperture of f8 and focusing at a distance of 5 meters. And that's exactly here. That's the first setting, is the setting I used most of the time. The alternative setting I also used was going for an aperture of f11 and a focusing distance of 2.5 meters, which is exactly here. And you see how simple this is. And now I don't have to worry within the range specified by the depth of field table or specified by a reasonable app, which can also calculate that because there is a mathematical calculus underlying it. You will know for sure that within the range specified from the app or the DOF table, everything within that range will be reasonably sharp and in focus. Let's test this out, since Jennifer and her other fellows from The Witcher on top of my TV screen in the background are within the range, so that if I go for f11 and the focusing distance of 2.5 meters, they should be reasonably sharp. Let's take a shot. Let's have a look into play, and then let's zoom in. And then you see, this is a sharp image. Jennifer is sharp. The other fellow figures from The Witcher in the background are sharp. You can even see my Leica shares, which are outdated and expired in the background on the wall, are sharp. And that's the way it works. So I selected a few sample images from me walking down the streets in New York City and using zone focusing to actually immediately take the shot when something is catching my attention. And as I just mentioned, don't be mistaken by the aperture here. I used exclusively two apertures, namely f8, focusing at 5 meters as I just illustrated on the depth of field table, and f11, getting the focusing distance on the lens to 2.5 meters, which I also just demonstrated in the studio. And I was shooting here at an ISO of 100, I get the full resolution, and if I crop into 100% in these images, you will see that this is really reasonably sharp. Of course, here on moving cars and moving bikes, you have some motion blurriness, but everything else is pretty sharp and in focus. And it's an easy way to immediately get the shot because the focus is predetermined on the lens. And whenever something catches your attention, you just take the shot. Simple like that. And that is something which no autofocus in terms of speed can reach. Because in autofocus, there will always be that fraction of a second, even on the fastest camera, where the focus needs to be found. Here, it's instantly there because you preset your parameters on the lens. Quite nice. Let's have another look here, cropping in by 100%. Looks pretty good in my opinion. Motion blurriness, as I said, but a reasonably sharp image if you look here at Radio City and the music hall. Let's look at another image. Same thing here, again Radio City, and you see this is pretty sharp. I think the result I have achieved here is absolutely fine for street photography. And again, some motion blurriness here. Here's another example. Looking at the far horizon, you see the building is very sharp because you saw in the range I was choosing and then setting up the focusing distance and the aperture on the lens, I made that remark that I pay attention to a range where the right-hand side of the range is infinity. And you can see this here. The very far away building here is pretty sharp, very crisp, very clear. Looks really good. And that's a technique I use in street photography. It's something which you can deploy here for your Leica-M lens combination with the Leica SL3 and worked like a charm, as you can see here. Here's some fountain in front of a building, 1251 here. Everything is sharp. Here is someone transporting packages or parcels. Next image here, one of these typical street images in New York City. It's all around Radio City in Midtown here. And you see there is so much information captured by the 60 megapixel sensor of the Leica SL3. And you also see here, for instance, this is super sharp and super crisp and really something which I appreciate. Here a guy on a bike. And I think the level of detail you get here by applying that technology of zone focusing, which I just explained, is pretty successful in taking images. Motion blurriness again on that guy, also here, but the rest of the image where people are standing or sitting looking at me here is getting me a very sharp and very crisp image. Here, family lunch, some people gathering around the table having some food and drinks. And again, if I go here to the far horizon, everything is super crisp, super clear, and super sharp. Another image here, you know, the usual New York City cab passing by. Captured sharp here, quite nice. And also here on that side, a crowd waiting for the traffic light to switch to green. Here another part of the city, I think that's in the Diamond District, which is 47th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue. A lot of stores here which sell you jewelry and watches. I personally bet, as a side remark, you get more Swiss luxury watches in the Diamond District in New York than in all of Switzerland. And nicely captured here. The colors look nice and crisp. I think the micro contrast of these M lenses typically is quite nice if you look at that. And everything is sharp and in focus, except if something is moving, like here, that person with the blue sweatshirt, but everything else is very sharp and in focus. A last image looking into one of these jewelry stores, and also here, crispiness, clarity, sharpness, wherever I go. I think that's enough. I hope I convinced you that zone focusing in my particular case here and the way I explained before was working very well and gave me some quite nice pictures in NYC. All right, if you look at that camera lens combo, it's beautiful. It's non-intrusive. It's a classical street photography setup. That's why I like this lens so much. I think this is the smallest Leica-M lens I own. Aperture starts only at f5.6, so not really useful for achieving a shallow depth of field, of course, but it is a brilliant lens for street and reportage photography. And this is a truly non-intrusive setup. No one will mind you taking an image of a scene in front of the camera if you come with a small bundle like this one here. And I hope you liked my presentation. I think I covered everything people need to know about how to shoot Leica-M lenses on Leica SL camera bodies, in this particular on the Leica SL3. And if you liked my video, don't forget to drop me a thumbs up. Stay tuned on my channel, there's always more to come. Thanks for watching, stay safe and healthy, and of course, peace out.